They laughed at her cheap shoes. They mocked her stained apron. They treated her like she was part of the furniture, invisible and worthless. But when Emily Vance walked past the frantic tech team, glanced at the Billionaire's frozen laptop screen, and typed 3 lines of code in 6 seconds, the laughter died instantly. That 3-line fix didn't just save a merger, it exposed a corporate conspiracy worth millions. But what the Billionaire CEO, Arthur Blackwood, did next didn't just change Emily's life, it destroyed the people who tried to bury her. This is the story of how a waitress outsmarted a room full of executives and got the ultimate revenge. The distinct sound of crystal shattering against marble silenced the kitchen of the Gilded Cage, New York City's most pretentious steakhouse. "You clumsy, useless waste of space!" The voice belonged to Frederick, the floor manager, a man whose ego was inversely proportional to his actual talent. Emily Vance dropped to her knees, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had been on her feet for 14 hours. "I'm sorry, Frederick. The tray was slippery. I'll pay for it." "You're damn right you'll pay for it," Frederick sneered, looming over her as she picked up shards of a wine glass that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "That's coming out of your tips, if you have any left after I dock you for being late yesterday." Emily bit her lip until she tasted iron. She couldn't argue. She couldn't fight back. Not today. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a notification she didn't need to look at to understand. It was a reminder from St. Jude's Medical Center. Her younger brother, Liam, needed his 2nd round of dialysis this week, and her bank account was currently sitting at $42. 18 hostas. "Get up," Frederick snapped. "Clean this mess and fix your face. We have the Blackwood reservation in 20 minutes. If you embarrass me in front of Arthur Blackwood, I won't just fire you, Emily. I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Emily nodded, sweeping the glass into a dustpan. Arthur Blackwood. The name sent a ripple of nervous energy through the staff. He was the CEO of Blackwood Dynamics, a tech conglomerate worth $300 billion. He was known for 2 things: his ruthless efficiency and his utter lack of patience for incompetence. Tonight was rumored to be the night Blackwood Dynamics acquired Nexus, a rival software firm, for a historic $100 million. The deal was supposed to be signed right here, at Table 1, the private alcove in the back. As Emily retreated to the dish pit to wash her hands, she caught her reflection in the stainless steel. Dark circles bruised the skin under her eyes. Her uniform was slightly too big, hanging off her frame. No one looking at her would guess that 3 years ago she had been the youngest doctoral candidate in MIT's advanced algorithmic program. No one would guess that she had published a paper on quantum encryption that was cited by NASA. That life died the day her parents' car skidded off an icy bridge, leaving her alone to raise a sick 6-year-old brother. The stipend from the university wouldn't cover Liam's medical bills. Waitressing at a high-end place, combined with freelance coding gigs that she did at 3:00 a.m., barely kept them afloat. "Emily," Frederick barked from the front. "They're here. You're on water and bread service. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look Mr. Blackwood in the eye. You are a ghost. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Emily whispered. She walked out into the dining room, just as the entourage entered. The air in the room seemed to change pressure. Arthur Blackwood walked in first. He was a man in his late 50s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Emily's family home. He radiated power. Trailing behind him was a younger man, slick and polished, holding a briefcase like it was the nuclear football. This was Marcus Thorne, Blackwood's chief technology officer. Emily knew him from the tech journals she still read secretly on her breaks. Thorne was a media darling, hailed as a visionary, though rumors on the coding forum suggested he was more of a politician than a programmer. "Mr. Blackwood, right this way," Frederick said, bowing so low it looked painful. They took their seats at table 1. Opposite them sat the team from Nexus, looking nervous. Emily approached the table with the water pitcher. Her hand was steady, purely out of muscle memory. "The valuation is solid, Arthur," Marcus Thorne was saying, his voice loud enough to carry. He sounded arrogant, too confident. "My team has vetted the Nexus source code. It's clean. The integration with our systems will be seamless. We sign tonight. The stock jumps 15% by morning." Arthur Blackwood didn't smile. He picked up the menu, not even glancing at Emily as she poured sparkling water into his glass. "I don't care about the stock jump, Marcus. I care about stability. If this software crashes our grid like the last update, heads will roll. Literal heads, figuratively speaking." Marcus laughed, a dry, nervous sound. "Impossible. I wrote the integration patch myself. It's bulletproof." Emily froze for a fraction of a second. She poured water for Marcus. He wrote it himself? Thorne hadn't written a line of code since 2018. Everyone knew he offloaded the heavy lifting to junior devs in Mumbai. "Water," Marcus snapped, noticing her brief pause. He didn't look up. He just gestured with his hand as if swatting a fly. "Keep it coming, and try not to breathe on the food when it arrives." "Of course, sir," Emily murmured. She retreated to the shadows of the service station, watching. Her heart was pounding. She needed this night to go smoothly. A good tip from a table like this could cover Liam's meds for a month. She just had to stay invisible. But as the appetizers arrived and the laptops were opened, Emily noticed something. Marcus Thorne was sweating. He kept tapping his foot beneath the table. He wasn't just nervous, he was terrified. By the time the main courses were cleared, the atmosphere at table 1 had shifted from celebratory to tense. The plates of untouched filet mignon and lobster thermidor sat cooling as every set of eyes focused on the massive monitor that had been set up at the end of the table. Arthur Blackwood sat with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Run the simulation, Marcus. I want to see the live data merge before I sign the check." The CEO of Nexus, a jittery man named Julian, looked at Marcus. "We're ready when you are." Marcus wiped his forehead with a silk napkin. "Of course. Just initiating the handshake protocol now." Emily was clearing the bread plates, moving silently around the perimeter of the table. She was close enough to see the screen. It was a complex visualization of data streams, Blackwood's massive logistical network merging with the Nexus database. Marcus hit enter. The screen flashed green. Numbers began to scroll rapidly. "Phase 1 complete," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "Data migration at 20%. Efficiency is up." "Good," Blackwood grunted. "Push it to 100%. I want to see the load-bearing capacity." "Pushing to full load," Marcus said. Emily paused. She saw something on the screen that made her stomach drop. In the bottom left corner of the terminal window, a small red line of text flickered for a millisecond. It was a recursive error loop. To a layman, it looked like noise. To Emily, who had spent years debugging kernel-level architecture, it looked like a bomb. "Don't say anything," she told herself. "You're a waitress. You serve water. You don't debug billion-dollar mergers." "Migration at 60%, Marcus announced. "Look at those speeds, Arthur. It's a masterpiece." "Wait," Blackwood said, leaning forward. "Why is the latency spiking?" It's just the firewall adjusting," Marcus stammered. "Standard protocol." "It's not the firewall," Emily whispered. She hadn't meant to say it out loud. It just slipped out. Marcus whipped his head around, his eyes narrowing into slits. "Excuse me? Did the help just speak?" Frederick, the manager, materialized out of thin air, grabbing Emily's arm hard enough to bruise. "I am so sorry, Mr. Thorne. She's new. She's incompetent. Emily, get to the kitchen. Now." "No, wait," Arthur Blackwood said. His voice was quiet, but it stopped Frederick dead in his tracks. The billionaire turned his steel-grey eyes onto Emily. "What did you say?" Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at the screen. The red flicker was happening faster now. "It's not the firewall, sir. It's a memory leak in the pointer assignment. Line 402. If you let that bar reach 100%, it's going to crash your entire mainframe. You'll lose the data, all of it." The table went dead silent. Marcus Thorne stood up, his face turning a violent shade of red. "You ignorant little... How dare you? You're a waitress. You think you know code because you saw a movie once? Get her out of here." "I'm serious," Emily said, her voice shaking, but her eyes locked on Blackwood. "The loop is recursive. It's eating the RAM. Look at the cache buffer. It's overflowing." "Security," Marcus yelled. "Get this woman out." "Run it." Marcus turned back to Blackwood, desperate. "Arthur, ignore her. She's probably on drugs. Look, we're at 80%. It's fine." Blackwood looked at Emily, then at Marcus. For a second he hesitated, but tradition and hierarchy won out. He couldn't possibly take technical advice from a server over his own CTO. "Proceed, Marcus," Blackwood said coldly. Then he looked at Frederick. "Remove her." Frederick yanked Emily backward. "You are fired," he hissed in her ear. "Get your things and get out." As Frederick dragged her toward the kitchen doors, Marcus hit the final key to execute the 100% merge. "And done," Marcus said triumphantly. "Welcome to the future." For 3 seconds, the screen showed a beautiful, seamless graph. Then, everything froze. The graph disappeared. The screen turned a sickening, solid blue. Then, the lights in the restaurant flickered. The tablet on the table connected to the company network went black. Arthur Blackwood's phone buzzed. Then the phone of the Nexus CEO buzzed. "What is happening?" Blackwood demanded, his voice rising. I don't know," Marcus typed frantically. "It's unresponsive. The system is locked." "My dashboard is gone," the Nexus CEO shouted. "Our client database. It's showing 0 records. Arthur, what did you do?" "It's the fail-safe," Marcus yelled, sweat now pouring down his face. "It must be a server outage in Virginia. It's not the code." Emily, standing in the doorway of the kitchen with Frederick's hand still on her arm, watched the chaos. She knew exactly what was happening. The recursive loop had triggered a stack overflow, and because Marcus hadn't isolated the sandbox, the error was cascading backward into the Blackwood main servers. It wasn't just failing, it was wiping the drive. "Arthur," the Nexus CEO was standing now. "We are losing $4 million of transaction data per second. Stop it!" "I can't!" Marcus screamed, slamming the laptop keys. "It's not letting me in. I'm locked out of root access." "You idiot!" Blackwood roared, standing up and flipping the table, sending the fine china crashing to the floor. Fix it now." "I don't know how," Marcus cried, his arrogance completely gone, replaced by the whimpering of a fraud exposed. The room was in panic. Waiters were freezing. The wealthy patrons at other tables were watching the billionaire melt down. Emily looked at Frederick. "Let me go." "You're fired! Get out!" Frederick shouted. "Frederick," Emily said, her voice dropping an octave, turning into the cold, hard tone of the person she used to be before the tragedy. "If that system isn't patched in the next 60 seconds, the encryption keys will rotate and that data is gone forever. Blackwood will lose more than money. He'll lose the company. Do you want to be the manager who kicked out the only person who can stop it?" Frederick hesitated. He looked at the chaos at table 1. Emily didn't wait. She ripped her arm from his grip. She didn't run. She walked with purpose. She marched right back into the dining room, past the stunned guests, straight to the center of the disaster. Arthur Blackwood was holding Marcus by the lapels of his expensive suit. "Do something!" "Move," Emily said. She didn't say it politely. She said it like a command. Arthur Blackwood turned, stunned to see the fired waitress standing there. "Get away from there!" Marcus shrieked. "You've done enough!" Emily shoved Marcus. Hard. The CTO stumbled back into a chair. She stood before the laptop. The blue screen of death was flickering. Most people thought a blue screen meant the end. Emily knew it was just a pause. She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out a USB drive she always kept on her, containing her own diagnostic tools she used for freelance work, and jammed it into the side port. "Don't touch that," Blackwood warned, stepping forward. "Shut up," Emily said. The billionaire stopped. No one had ever told him to shut up. Emily's fingers flew across the keyboard. She bypassed the GUI, opening the command terminal. It was a black box with white text. The code was scrolling so fast it was a blur. System critical. Root access denied. "Come on," she muttered. She typed a backdoor override she had learned during a hackathon in Boston 5 years ago. "Access granted." "She's hacking us," Marcus yelled. "Security!" "If you speak again," Blackwood snarled at Marcus, "I will throw you through that window." He watched the screen. He didn't understand the code, but he understood the focus in the waitress's eyes. Emily saw the memory leak. It was worse than she thought. It was eating the file structure. She had to write a patch to reroute the memory allocation and isolate the corrupt sector. She had to write 40 lines of CPALD plus code, perfectly, without a compiler check, in real time. She typed. Her fingers were a blur. The world around her, the restaurant, the debt, Frederick, Liam's sickness, faded away. It was just her and the logic. Void repair, ors sector, korin, Peter, art, ort. She hit the final bracket. She hit enter. The screen went black. Total silence in the restaurant. 5 seconds passed. "You broke it," Marcus whispered. "You killed it." Then a single white blinking cursor appeared. System restore initiated. Data recovery 100%. Merge successful. The familiar Blackwood Dynamics logo spun onto the screen, glowing blue. The dashboard reappeared. The numbers stabilized. Emily pulled her USB drive out, closed the terminal window, and stepped back. She took a deep breath, smoothing her apron. She turned to a stunned Arthur Blackwood. "Your pointer assignment on line 402 was referencing a null value," she said calmly. "And your CTO forgot to close his loops. It's fixed now. Have a nice evening." She turned around and walked toward the kitchen, shaking slightly. She expected gratitude. She expected a thank you. Instead, she heard Marcus's voice, shrill and desperate. "She planted it. Arthur, don't you see? She planted the virus so she could fix it. It's a corporate sabotage scam. Arrest her." Emily froze. She turned back to see Marcus pointing a shaking finger at her, his face twisted in malicious panic. He was cornered, and he was dangerous. Arthur Blackwood looked at Marcus. Then he looked at Emily. His expression was unreadable. "Security," Blackwood said. 2 large men in suits stepped forward. "Detain her," Blackwood commanded. Emily's blood ran cold. The private office of the Gilded Cage was usually reserved for counting cash and scolding tardy waiters. Tonight, it felt like a federal interrogation cell. Emily sat on a hard wooden chair in the center of the room. By the door stood the 2 security guards, their arms crossed like stone statues. Frederick, the manager, was pacing in the corner, hyperventilating into a paper bag. But the real energy in the room came from the 2 men standing over Emily, Arthur Blackwood and Marcus Thorne. "She's a corporate spy, Arthur." Marcus was pacing frantically, his face slick with sweat. "I've heard of this. Nexus probably hired her. They planted her here weeks ago, waiting for this moment. She injects the malicious code, pretends to fix it, and gains access to our back end. We need to call the FBI. Arthur Blackwood leaned against the heavy oak desk, studying Emily. He hadn't said a word since they entered the room. He just watched her, his eyes analyzing her like a line of complex code he couldn't quite parse. "I didn't plant anything," Emily said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "And if you call the FBI, they'll find your fingerprints all over that incompetence, Marcus, not mine." "You shut your mouth!" Marcus lunged forward, but Arthur held up a hand. "Enough," Arthur said. His voice was low, gravelly. He looked at Emily. "You typed a root access override. That's not something you learn on YouTube. Who are you?" "I'm a waitress," Emily said defiantly. "I serve steak and pour water. That's all you people see, isn't it?" "A waitress who knows C++ and kernel architecture," Arthur countered. He walked closer, towering over her. "Marcus says you sabotaged the merge. The logs will show who wrote the code, but logs can be faked. Why should I believe you?" Emily looked up at him. "Because if I wanted to destroy your company, Mr. Blackwood, I wouldn't have stopped at the merge. I would have let the Stack Overflow run. It would have fried your on-site backups within 3 minutes. Then I would have shorted your stock and made a fortune. I didn't do that. I saved your billion-dollar deal, and I did it for free." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I needed my tips," Emily said flatly. "I have bills to pay, and I don't like seeing bad code win." Marcus let out a scoff of disbelief. "Bad code? I am the CTO of the largest tech firm on the East Coast. You are a nobody." "Then why did you use a malloc function without a free command?" Emily shot back instantly. "That's coding 101, Marcus. That's why the memory leaked. You didn't write that patch. You copied and pasted it from a legacy forum, probably from 2015, and you didn't check the syntax." The room went silent. Marcus turned pale. The specificity of the accusation hit him like a physical blow. Arthur Blackwood pushed off the desk. He looked at Marcus. "Is that true?" Of course not," Marcus stammered, tugging at his collar. "She's speaking gibberish. She's trying to confuse you with jargon." Arthur turned back to Emily. "What is your full name?" "Emily Vance." Arthur paused. The name seemed to trigger something in his memory. He pulled out his phone and typed something. A few seconds passed. His eyebrows shot up. "Emily Vance," Arthur read from his screen. "PhD candidate at MIT, specializing in algorithmic cryptography. Expelled 3 years ago due to financial insolvency." "I wasn't expelled," Emily said, her voice tightening. "I withdrew. My parents died. I had to work." "A tragedy," Marcus sneered. "But it doesn't prove she's innocent. Desperate people do desperate things. She probably sold her skills to the highest bidder." Arthur put his phone away. "Marcus, go back to the office. Secure the logs. Do not touch the code base." "Arthur, you can't leave her here." "Go!" Arthur roared. Marcus flinched, glared at Emily with pure venom, and stormed out of the office. When the door clicked shut, the room felt smaller. Arthur dismissed the guards and Frederick with a wave of his hand. Finally, it was just the billionaire and the waitress. "You embarrassed him," Arthur said calmly. "Marcus is a petty man. He will try to destroy you for that. I'm already at the bottom, Mr. Blackwood," Emily said, standing up. "There's not much lower I can go. Can I leave? My shift ended 20 minutes ago, and I have somewhere to be." Arthur studied her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. It wasn't the standard company card. It was heavy, black cardstock with gold embossing and a private number. "Come to this address tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Arthur said. Emily looked at the card, then at him. Is this a job offer? It's an opportunity to prove you aren't a liar, Arthur said. If you really are the one who fixed that code, you're wasting your life pouring water. But if Marcus is right, and you're a saboteur, well, the police station is right across the street from my office. Emily took the card. I didn't do it for a job. I did it because it was right. 8 a.m., Miss Vance. Don't be late. Emily didn't say another word. She turned and walked out of the office, out of the restaurant, and into the cold New York night. She didn't look back at the luxury she was leaving behind. She just wrapped her thin coat tighter around herself and ran toward the subway. She had to get to the hospital. The St. Jude's Medical Center smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. It was a smell Emily had come to associate with fear. She walked into room 304 quietly. Liam was asleep, hooked up to the dialysis machine that hummed rhythmically, keeping him alive. He looked so small in the hospital bed, his skin pale and translucent. He was only 6. He shouldn't know what a hospital ceiling looked like. Emily? She jumped slightly. Dr. Aris Thorne, no relation to Marcus, thankfully, was standing in the doorway. He looked tired. Dr. Aris, Emily whispered. How is he? His kidney function is down to 12%, the doctor said gently, walking over to check the chart. The dialysis is keeping him stable, but it's not a permanent solution. We need a transplant, Emily. Soon. Emily felt the familiar, crushing weight in her chest. I'm working on the funds. I picked up extra shifts, and I have a potential freelance gig. It's not just the funds, Dr. Aris said, looking at her with sympathy. It's the list. He's moving up, but without the deposit for the surgery secured, the board won't greenlight the organ procurement even if we find a match. You need $50,000 up front within the next 2 weeks to keep his active status. 50,000. It might as well have been 50 million. Emily nodded, fighting back tears. I'll get it. I promise. She sat by Liam's bed for an hour, holding his small hand. She thought about Arthur Blackwood. She thought about Marcus Thorne. She thought about the power they held. They threw around millions like it was confetti. Marcus had risked a $100 million deal just to feed his ego. She looked at Liam's sleeping face. I have to go tomorrow, she decided. I have to take the risk. Meanwhile, across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Marcus Thorne was not sleeping. He was pacing his living room, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. On the speakerphone was a distorted voice. You said the merge would hide the siphon, the voice hissed. It was supposed to, Marcus shouted at the phone. The crash was supposed to cover the data transfer. We were going to skim 2% of the Nexus assets during the reboot. It was perfect. But it didn't crash, the voice said coldly. Because a waitress stopped it. She's a freak. Marcus threw his glass against the wall. She saw the recursive loop. She patched it before the system could dump the logs. Now the logs are intact, and the siphon script is still buried in the kernel. If Arthur audits the code, he'll find the embezzlement program. Then you have a problem, Marcus. No, we have a problem, Marcus snapped. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. We need to get rid of her. She's coming to the tower tomorrow. Arthur invited her. He invited her. The voice sounded concerned. He wants to test her. If she gains his trust, she'll have root access. She'll find the siphon script. Marcus paused, a dark look crossing his face. I need her discredited. Or worse, I need her to never touch a keyboard again. Leave it to me, the voice said. By tomorrow noon, Emily Vance will wish she had stayed in the kitchen. Blackwood Tower pierced the sky like a shard of black obsidian. It was an intimidating fortress of glass and steel. At 7:55 a.m., Emily stood in the lobby, wearing her only professional outfit, a grey blazer she had bought from a thrift store and a pair of slacks that had been hemmed twice. She felt out of place among the suits rushing through the atrium, but she kept her head high. She was doing this for Liam. "Name?" the security guard asked. "Emily Vance. I have a meeting with Mr. Blackwood." The guard checked his list. He frowned. Then he looked up at her with a smirk. "I don't see you here." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Check again." He gave me his card. She pulled the black card out. The guard didn't even look at it. "Mr. Blackwood is a busy man. He doesn't take meetings with walk-ins. Clear the line, please. But move along, or I'll have you escorted out." Emily felt panic rising. Had Arthur played her? Was this a cruel joke? Suddenly, the elevator banks opened and a hush fell over the lobby. Arthur Blackwood walked out, flanked by his assistants. He looked as imposing as he had the night before. "Mr. Blackwood!" Emily called out, stepping around the security desk. The guard grabbed her arm. "Hey, back off!" Arthur stopped. He turned and saw the commotion. He saw Emily struggling with the guard. He didn't smile, but he nodded to his assistant. "Let her through," Arthur commanded. The guard released her instantly, looking terrified. Emily straightened her jacket and walked toward the Billionaire. "You're early," Arthur said. "I like that. Follow me." He led her not to the top floor, but to the 40th floor, the server deck. It was a massive room filled with humming server racks and a central command center that looked like NASA. Dozens of programmers were typing away in silence. In the center of the room stood Marcus Thorne. He looked rested, composed, and smug. "Good morning, Arthur," Marcus said, ignoring Emily. "We've completed the post-mortem on last night's incident. It seems it was a hardware malfunction, after all. Nothing to do with my code." "Is that so?" Arthur asked dryly. "Yes. And regarding this person," Marcus gestured to Emily with disgust. "I've done a background check. It's concerning, Arthur." Marcus snapped his fingers. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. It displayed Emily's face, her university records, and then a series of police reports. "Grand larceny, corporate espionage, identity theft." Marcus read the headlines. According to these records, Miss Vance was fired from her last 3 jobs for stealing credit card information from customers. Emily gasped. "That's a lie. I've never stolen a penny in my life." "The records don't lie," Marcus said smoothly. "She's a con artist, Arthur. She probably hacked the restaurant's terminal last night just to stage that rescue so she could get close to you. She's hunting for a payday." Arthur looked at the screen, then at Emily. The evidence looked damning. Of course, Arthur didn't know that Marcus had paid a dark web forger $10,000 at 4 a.m. to plant those records in the public database. "It's fake," Emily said, her voice shaking with rage. "He's fabricating this because he knows I saw his code. He knows he's incompetent." "Incompetent?" Marcus laughed. "Okay, let's settle this. Arthur, you want to know if she's the real deal. Let's test her." Marcus pointed to a standalone terminal in the center of the room. "This is an isolated server running a brute force encryption scenario. It's a level 5 Blackwood security puzzle. It usually takes our senior devs 3 hours to crack it. If she's the genius she claims to be, she should be able to do it." He turned to Emily with a shark-like grin. "If you crack it in under 10 minutes, we'll believe you. If you fail, you go to jail for fraud." Arthur looked at Marcus. He sensed the trap. 10 minutes is impossible, Marcus." "Not for a genius," Marcus challenged. "Unless she's a fraud." Emily looked at the terminal. She looked at Marcus's smug face. She knew the game was rigged, but she also knew she had no choice. If she walked away, the fake police records would follow her. She would never work again. Liam would die. "I'll do it," Emily said. "Emily, you don't have to," Arthur started, surprised by her boldness. "I'll do it," she repeated. "But when I pass, I want his job." The room gasped. The programmers stopped typing. Marcus's eyes went cold. "Deal." Emily sat at the terminal. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. "Start," Marcus said. Emily began to type. Immediately she realized the trap. The keyboard was remapped. The keys didn't correspond to the characters. Marcus had scrambled the input. Every time she typed A, it registered as Q. It was impossible to code like this. She looked up at Marcus. He winked at her. "He wants me to fail." But Marcus had forgotten one thing. Emily Vance didn't just learn to code in a classroom. She learned on broken second-hand laptops with sticky keys. She learned to code in her head before she ever touched the keys. She closed her eyes. She visualized the keyboard layout. She mentally remapped the keys. If A is Q and S is W. She started typing again, slowly at first, then faster. The code appeared on the screen. It was messy, but it was compiling. 1 minute passed. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. "She's just typing garbage," Marcus scoffed to Arthur. "Look at her. She's panicking." Arthur didn't speak. He was watching the screen. At 7 minutes, Emily hit the execute command. The screen flashed red. "Access denied." Marcus laughed loudly. "Told you. Security, get the cuffs." "Wait," Emily said softly. She hit one more key. The screen flashed red again, and then, suddenly, turned bright green. "System unlocked. Admin access granted." But then, text began to scroll that Emily hadn't written. The system wasn't just unlocking, it was dumping a hidden file. "Hidden directory found, US Arm Thorn, offshore to accounts.log." The smile vanished from Marcus's face. Emily stood up. She pointed at the screen. "I cracked your puzzle, Marcus, but since you gave me root access to the isolated server, I thought I'd check the hidden partitions. What is Project Siphon?" On the giant wall screen, for everyone to see, a spreadsheet opened. It showed wire transfers, millions of dollars funneled from Blackwood Dynamics into a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The room went deathly silent. Arthur Blackwood walked slowly toward the screen. He looked at the numbers. Then he turned to Marcus Thorne. "Marcus," Arthur said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "why is there $12 million of my company's money in an account under your wife's maiden name?" Marcus stumbled back, his face turning the color of ash. It's a glitch. She planted it. She hacked the bank." "This is a local log," Emily said, her voice ringing clear through the room. "It was created 6 months ago. I wasn't even in the building." Arthur turned to his security chief, the head of the guards who had tried to stop Emily earlier. "Lock the building," Arthur ordered. "No one leaves, especially not Mr. Thorne." Marcus panicked. He looked at the door, then at the window, then at Emily. His eyes were wild. He reached into his jacket. For a second, Emily thought he had a gun. But he pulled out a remote control. "I swear to God, Arthur!" Marcus screamed, holding his thumb over a red button. "If anyone comes near me, I'll wipe the servers. I have a magnetic pulse trigger installed in the server room. I'll erase everything. $300 billion of data, gone." Emily realized with horror that he wasn't bluffing. The EMP device was real. She had read about the installation specs in the system she had just cracked. It was right below them. Arthur froze. "Marcus, put it down." "Get me a helicopter," Marcus shrieked, "and $5 million in cash, or Blackwood Dynamics goes back to the Stone Age." He looked at Emily with pure hatred. "And throw her off the roof." The silence on the 40th floor was suffocating. The only sound was the low hum of the cooling fans in the server racks, and the ragged breathing of Marcus Thorne. "Back off!" Marcus screamed, his thumb trembling over the red button of the remote. "I'm not going to prison. I'm Marcus Thorne. I built this company." "You didn't build anything," Arthur Blackwood said, his voice steady, though his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "You stole code, you embezzled funds, and now you're threatening to destroy the livelihood of 3,000 employees. Put the remote down, Marcus. We can talk about a deal." "No deals!" Marcus was sweating profusely, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. "I want a helicopter on the roof in 10 minutes. I want the flight logs wiped. And I want 5 million in bearer bonds. If I don't hear the rotors in 10 minutes, I press this button. The EMP charges in the server room will detonate. The magnetic pulse will wipe every hard drive in this building. The backups, the client data, the source code, all of it, gone. You'll be bankrupt by lunch." Emily watched Marcus. She wasn't looking at the remote. She was looking at the server rack directly behind him. A small blue light was blinking on the main receiver unit. She slowly sat back down at the terminal. "Don't you move!" Marcus shouted, pointing the remote at her. "Get away from the keyboard." "I'm just sitting down, Marcus," Emily said, raising her hands slowly. "You're winning. I'm just tired." "You're right, I'm winning," Marcus sneered. "You thought you could outsmart me? I'm a visionary." Emily's eyes flicked to the screen. She had root access. She had unlocked the system. But Marcus was right about one thing. The EMP was a hardware fail-safe. It was likely hardwired into the building's emergency grid. Software couldn't physically cut a wire, but software could change a signal. "Arthur," Marcus barked, "make the call, get the helicopter." Arthur looked at Emily. He saw her fingers hovering millimeters above the keys. She gave him a microscopic nod. "Fine," Arthur said, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling the pilot. Just stay calm." As Arthur dialed, creating a distraction, Emily's mind raced. The remote in Marcus's hand was a standard RF transmitter. It sent a signal to the receiver in the server room to trigger the capacitors. If she could flood the receiver with noise, a denial-of-service attack on the internal frequency, the receiver wouldn't be able to hear the remote's command. She needed to write a script to hijack the building's Wi-Fi nodes and blast the server room with signal interference. She had to do it without looking at the keyboard, and she had to do it in seconds. "The pilot is 5 minutes out," Arthur lied, holding the phone to his ear. "He's spooling up the rotors." "Good," Marcus grinned, a manic, twisted expression. "And you?" He looked at Emily. "You're coming with me. You're my insurance policy. If the cops try to shoot the chopper, you take the bullet." "Leave her out of this," Arthur said, stepping forward. "Back up." Marcus jabbed the remote forward. "I'm taking her." Emily's fingers made contact with the keys. She didn't look down. She kept her eyes locked on Marcus's face, maintaining eye contact to keep him focused on her anger, not her hands. Sudo ifconfig wlan0 down, sudo uconfig wlan0 mode monitor. She was typing by feel, relying on the muscle memory that had made her a prodigy at MIT. "Why do you hate me so much, Marcus?" Emily asked, loud enough to cover the faint click of the mechanical keys. "Is it because I'm a waitress? Or is it because I remind you of what you pretend to be?" "You're nothing," Marcus spat. "You're a peasant. You serve food to your betters. I am a god in this industry." "Packet inject of 2.4 GHz, ET broadcast, flood." "A god who steals from his wife?" Emily goaded him. "Does she know about the offshore accounts, or the mistress in Monaco? I saw those emails in the logs too, Marcus." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Shut up! Shut up! She's going to leave you, Marcus, and she's going to take half of what you stole. You'll have nothing." "I said shut up!" Marcus screamed. He cracked. The pressure was too much. He didn't wait for the helicopter. He didn't wait for the money. He just wanted to burn it all down. He slammed his thumb down on the red button. Arthur flinched. The security guards ducked. The programmers squeezed their eyes shut, waiting for the blast, the sparks, the end of Blackwood dynamics. Click. Marcus pressed it again. Click. Click. Nothing happened. The lights didn't flicker. The servers hummed peacefully. The blue light on the receiver behind him remained steady. Marcus looked at the remote in horror. He shook it. He hit it against his palm. No, it's broken. Why isn't it working? Emily stopped typing. She hit enter one last time to clear her tracks. It's not broken, Marcus, Emily said, her voice ringing with cold authority. The signal is jammed. I just turned every Wi-Fi router on this floor into a signal jammer. Your remote is screaming into a void. No one can hear it. Marcus looked at her, his jaw dropping. The realization of what she had done, without even looking at the screen, hit him. It wasn't just skill. It was mastery. You, he whispered. Secure him, Arthur roared. The two security guards didn't hesitate this time. They tackled Marcus Thorne, driving him into the carpet. The remote skittered across the floor, useless plastic. Marcus screamed and thrashed, cursing Emily, cursing Arthur, cursing the world. But as they slapped the handcuffs on him, the room erupted. The programmers, the staff, the people whose jobs had just been saved. They started cheering. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a roar of relief and victory. Arthur Blackwood didn't cheer. He walked over to Marcus, who was being hauled to his feet, his expensive suit ruined, his face pressed against the floor a moment ago. Arthur leaned in close. You're fired, Marcus, and my lawyers are going to make sure you never see the outside of a cell again. You wanted to be famous? You're going to be the most famous cautionary tale in corporate history. As they dragged Marcus away, kicking and screaming toward the elevators, Arthur turned to Emily. She was still sitting at the terminal, her hands resting in her lap. She looked exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. Arthur walked over to her. The room went quiet again. He extended his hand. I think, Arthur said, a rare, genuine smile breaking his stoic face. We need to discuss your salary requirements, and I have a feeling they're going to be significantly higher than minimum wage plus tips. 3 months had passed since the incident at Blackwood Tower. The winter snow had melted into the grey slush of New York streets, eventually giving way to the budding green of spring. Inside the gilded cage, however, time seemed to have frozen. The clatter of expensive silverware against fine china, the low murmur of corporate gossip, and the tyranny of Frederick the floor manager remained the absolute constants of the universe. Table 4 has been waiting for their sparkling water for 3 minutes, Frederick hissed, cornering a young waitress near the service station. Her name was Sarah, and she was trembling in a way that was painfully familiar. What are you? A statue? If you cannot handle the pace, I will find someone who can. Do you want to end up on the street? No, Frederick. I'm sorry, I don't want excuses. I want results, Frederick snapped, checking his watch. Fix your apron. You look like a disaster. The heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open. Usually, Frederick would rush to the door with a practiced, oily smile, ready to greet a wealthy patron. But this time, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't just a customer entering, it was a presence. The chatter in the dining room died down. Heads turned, forks paused mid-air. Walking through the door was a woman who looked like she owned the city. She wore a tailored navy power suit that fit her perfectly, paired with heels that clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm of absolute authority. Her hair, once tied back in a messy bun, was now styled in effortless waves. Her skin glowed with health, But it was her eyes that stopped Frederick cold. He knew those eyes. He had seen them looking down at the floor, filled with shame, 1,000 times. Walking beside her, a half step behind, a gesture of deferential respect, was Arthur Blackwood. Frederick felt the blood drain from his face. He stumbled forward, his hands shaking. More, Mr. Blackwood, and Miss Vance? Emily stopped. She didn't smile. She didn't shrink. She looked at Frederick with a calm, dissecting gaze, like a scientist studying a particularly unpleasant insect. "Good evening, Frederick," she said. Her voice was smooth, lacking the tremble it used to have when he yelled at her. What a pleasant surprise," Frederick stammered, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "We didn't know you were coming. I would have prepared the—" "Table 1, Arthur interrupted, his voice cutting through Frederick's babbling like a knife. "And bring us the vintage Dom Perignon, the 2008. Right away, sir. Immediately." Frederick rushed to guide them to the private alcove, the very same table where Emily had poured water 3 months ago, invisible and terrified. Now she sat in the velvet booth, and Arthur sat opposite her. Frederick practically ran to the cellar. He returned with the bottle, his hands shaking so violently that the ice in the bucket rattled loud enough to be heard 3 tables away. He struggled to pop the cork, fumbling with the foil. Emily reached out, her hand steady, and gently took the bottle from him. With a quick, expert twist, she popped the cork with a soft sigh, not spilling a drop. She poured a glass for Arthur, then one for herself. "Thank you, Frederick," she said, placing the bottle down. Frederick stood there, wringing his hands. He knew about the promotion. Everyone in the city knew. The Waitress savior had been all over the tech blogs, head of cybersecurity, a salary rumored to be in the mid-6 figures. "Emily," Frederick started, his voice cracking. I just wanted to say, congratulations on the new position. I always told the staff you were destined for great things. I always knew you were special." Emily took a slow sip of champagne. She set the glass down and looked at him. The silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. "No, you didn't, Frederick," she said softly. Frederick froze. Pardon? You didn't think I was special?" Emily continued, her tone conversational but deadly. "You thought I was a waste of space. You called me clumsy and useless. When I was 5 minutes late because I had to carry my brother up 3 flights of stairs after his dialysis, you docked my pay. You stole my tips to pay for broken glasses that weren't my fault." Frederick looked around wildly. The other diners were watching. "I was just managing standards, Emily. You know how high the pressure is here. It's business." "You weren't managing," Arthur Blackwood said. He wasn't looking at Frederick. He was admiring the bubbles in his glass. "You were bullying. There is a difference. One builds a team. The other destroys morale." Arthur reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, folded document. He slid it across the table, past the candle, until it rested in front of Frederick. "I've been diversifying my portfolio, Frederick," Arthur said casually. "I decided to invest in the hospitality sector, specifically this building." Frederick's knees buckled. He had to grab the edge of the table to stay upright. You bought the Gilded Cage?" "I bought the holding company, yes," Arthur nodded. "But I'm too busy to manage a restaurant. I don't have the time to approve menus or hire staff." Arthur pointed his glass at Emily. "So I signed the deed over to her," Arthur said. "It's a signing bonus. Emily Vance is the sole owner of the Gilded Cage." The room seemed to spin for Frederick. He looked at the waitress he had tormented for 2 years. She wasn't just his superior now. She was his owner. She held the deed to the floor he stood on. "You own it?" Frederick whispered, his voice barely audible. "I do," Emily said. "And as the owner, I've been reviewing the payroll and the staff complaints. There are a lot of complaints about the management style, Frederick." Frederick began to hyperventilate. Tears welled up in his eyes, tears of fear, not remorse. "Please, Miss Vance, Emily, I have a mortgage. I have a car payment. Don't fire me. I'll do anything. I'll change, I swear." Emily looked at him. She thought about the power she held. She could crush him right now. She could have security drag him out. She could humiliate him the way he had humiliated her 1,000 times. She looked over at the service station. Sarah, the young waitress, was watching with wide, fearful eyes. Emily made a decision. "I'm not going to fire you, Frederick," Emily said. Frederick let out a sob of relief, slumping forward. "Oh, thank you. Thank you. You are an angel. I promise I will be the best manager. I'm not finished." Emily cut him off. Frederick snapped his mouth shut. "You aren't going to be the manager," Emily said firmly. "You lack the empathy required to lead people. You treat staff like machinery. So if you want to stay, you're going to learn what it feels like to be at the bottom." She pointed a manicured finger toward the kitchen doors. "Jose called in sick tonight. We are short a dishwasher. The shift starts now, minimum wage, no tips, and you will treat every server who brings you a dirty plate with absolute respect. If I hear you raise your voice once, then you are fired." Frederick stared at her. The humiliation was total. To go from the front of the house, wearing the suit, to the back of the house, wearing the rubber apron, scrubbing the grease off plates. "Well," Emily asked, "the dishes are piling up." Frederick looked at Arthur, who offered no help. He looked at the wealthy patrons, who were whispering and smirking. He looked at Sarah, the waitress he had just yelled at. Slowly, painfully, Frederick reached up and unpinned his gold manager name tag. He placed it on the table with a click. "Yes, Miss Vance," he whispered. He turned and walked toward the kitchen. As he passed Sarah, he kept his head down, shame radiating off him in waves. The kitchen doors swung shut behind him, swallowing him into the steam and noise of the dish pit. Emily let out a long breath she didn't know she was holding. Her shoulders relaxed. "That was mercy," Arthur observed quietly. "Most people would have thrown him out on the street." "He needs the money," Emily said, smoothing her napkin. "I know what it's like to be desperate, Arthur. I wouldn't wish that panic on anyone, even him. Besides, maybe a few months in hot water will clean his soul, not just the plates." Arthur raised his glass. "To cleaning the soul?" "To justice," Emily corrected, clinking her glass against his. Just then, her phone buzzed on the table. Emily picked it up. It was a message from Dr. Orris. Her heart skipped a beat. Even with the money, even with the new job, the fear for her brother never truly went away. She opened the text. There was a picture attached. It was Liam. He was sitting up in a hospital bed, but he wasn't hooked up to the dialysis machine. He was holding a massive stuffed tiger, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, his cheeks flushed with a healthy pink color that Emily hadn't seen in years. Text from Dr. Arris. "Kidney function is at 100%. The transplant has fully taken. No rejection markers. He's asking if he can join a soccer team when he gets out next week." Emily stared at the screen. The sounds of the restaurant faded away. The clinking glass, the music, the chatter. It all disappeared. All she saw was that smile. The signing bonus, the real cash bonus, not the restaurant, had paid for everything. The best surgeons, the private recovery room, the college trust fund. Liam was going to live. He was going to run and play and grow up. A single tear rolled down Emily's cheek. She didn't bother to wipe it away. "Emily?" Arthur asked gently. "Is it bad news?" Emily looked up, her eyes shining brighter than the diamonds in the chandelier above them. She turned the phone so Arthur could see the picture. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling with pure joy. "It's perfect. He wants to play soccer." Arthur smiled, a genuine, warm expression that softened his steel features. "Then we better buy him some cleats." Emily looked out the window at the New York skyline. The city lights were twinkling like stars. 3 months ago, she had stood on a subway platform, wondering if she should jump. Today, she sat at the head of the table. She had been invisible. She had been mocked. She had been broken. But she hadn't stayed down. She had used her mind to save a company, and she had used her heart to save her family. Emily Vance took a sip of champagne. It tasted like victory. And that is the story of how Emily Vance went from clearing tables to running an empire. It proves that your current situation is not your final destination. Emily showed us that true power isn't about how loud you can yell or how expensive your suit is. It's about skill, integrity, and the resilience to stand up when everyone expects you to fall. Frederick learned that the way you treat people on your way up is exactly how they will treat you on your way down. What would you have done in Emily's shoes? Would you have fired Frederick on the spot? Or do you think making him wash dishes was the better punishment? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about karma, justice, and the twists of fate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.